All right. Okay. Hello, everybody. Did anybody just watch the last class and wasn't here in person? Okay. But everyone's seen the first class, right? Okay, cool. So last time we covered just the intro to the template, how it's set up with the weather days, the managing float, building in float. We didn't go into too much detail on. We just kind of talked about like the methodology of it. But we also went into just the software in general, where everything is, all the buttons for the settings, and just some preliminary setting up calendars, adding in columns, and viewing different details. So does everybody have the file that we're going to use, or do they have their file saved from last time? Does anybody not? Okay, cool. Okay, so today we're going to go over identifying the milestones if you want to add more milestones, creating the outline structure, adding activities, assigning activity codes, which did we go over that in this class last time? Like assigning the text fields? Okay, I think this is the class that we did that a little bit. Yeah. So we'll go over that a little bit more. There is an inspector tool that we can go over. We're going to go through adding logic, tracing the logic, and then identifying your critical paths. This is if we get there. So we'll get to adding in logic for sure. We may pick back up next time here if we don't get through everything. It just depends kind of how quickly we move, how many questions you guys have. And feel free to ask questions, that's fine. And I'll walk around a bit too while we're doing like typing in stuff, so that if you guys have questions, I can come look at your screen. All right. Any questions before we get started? No question? Okay, you look like you're gonna ask one. Okay. All right. So to start off, let me move this to my other screen. Oh, it's like not letting me. Okay. So to start off, we have our milestones at the top. So if this is where, if you wanted to, because we went over changing the durations to 0 last time, right? Everyone good there? Okay. So that is how we made it a milestone, just kind of like a recap. We made it 0 days. That gave us the diamond, made it a milestone. And then if you want to make something a summary task, did we do the indent to make it a summary task? Okay, cool. Perfect. So if you don't remember how we did that, I'm just going to go through. Yeah, because we did it here with the storm and sanitary. So if you wanted to make one for sanitary sewer, you can, this is just review. You don't have to follow along. I'm going to add an activity, and then you would do the outdent and indent. So just a recap there, because we'll go over all that. Okay. All right. So then we can just jump right into adding activities. So there's a few different ways that you can add activities to the schedule. So let's go into, let's see, where is it? So let's go into the building. We're going to redo the grade work section. So to add an activity, there's a few different ways. You can right click on a row number and click insert task. That's one way that you can add an activity, and it's going to insert the task above the line you have clicked on. Is everyone good with that? So right click and then insert task. Another way that you can insert a task is if you have the insert key on your keyboard, then you can click that. I don't have one. But if you have an insert key, you can just click the insert key and that'll add a task to your schedule. Same thing, it's going to go above the line that you have selected. Another way that you can add it is by in this task ribbon here, you can click plus task. You guys see this button? So it's in the task ribbon. You can say plus task. That'll add one. And then, are there any other ways that you guys typically add activities? Any other ways I didn't go through? Okay, sure. Sure, yeah, you could do that. Any other ways that I didn't mention? All right. The last way would be if we scroll to the bottom with the empty cells, you can just type in them and that'll add activities to the end. You can just like actually just type in the empty cells and that will add them as well. That's more so like if you had something that you wanted to paste in, you could paste it in here and then you could do the cut and paste like you were saying and move it up. Okay, so again, the different ways to add activities are to right click on the row number and say insert task. You can click the insert key on your keyboard and you can hit the plus sign to add a task. Or you can type at the very end of your schedule and type in the cells. Everyone good with that? Okay. So now we are going to go through. Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't renumber it.
Sure.
It ends up logically.
Sure.
So is that something that you can?
You can change it.
Change it.
Yes. So I'm going to write that down because you can basically you can renumber your outline structure.
Yeah.
I can show you guys that now if you want to see it now, or we can do it later.
Whichever fits the train.
Sure.
Sometimes I got grilled by no one. Why is this number this and this?
Sure, sure.
I don't know the line item itself.
Yeah.
The word makes sense.
Sure,
You're
sure.
worried about a number off.
Sure.
Right? So
Yeah.
But it would be nicer as you move things around and they shift.
Sure.
The logic.
Mm-hmm.
Or you add that they
Yeah.
go in sequential
Right.
numbering with where the logic goes.
Yeah. So if you did, so you must have a sort on that's like sort by start or something. If you're doing that. So if you go to the view ribbon, and then in the view ribbon, if you click on sort and then say sort by, you can actually say permanently renumber tasks right here, and that will renumber it. So you'll want to do it like at the end when you're done with your baseline. Then you can permanently renumber the tasks, and that'll make them sequential.
So let's say the way through the job, and I'm
Sure.
moving items,
Mhm.
and we're going to do something before ever shown.
Sure.
And anyway,
Sure.
we move that up,
Sure.
and the number stays there.
Mhm.
So it's up
Mhm.
it's down here, but
Yeah.
it's now in between 50
Sure.
and it won't read like so. Every time we hit schedule.
No, so you would just do it like if you have a lot of numbers that are now out of order,
Right.
then you can renumber tasks, and then you don't necessarily need to sort by start anymore if they're already in that order that you want.
Okay.
Then they should stay in the right order when you move them.
Okay.
It just depends on how you have your sort.
So
But,
the thought process
yeah.
would be just, me anyway, would just go add, if I'm adding activities,
Yeah.
at the end,
Sure.
and tie them to the logic that they need
Yeah.
to do, they would pop up there,
Hmm.
but the number would probably be 390.
Yeah.
But it's going on.
Right, right. Yes, if you have like, so if I add an activity here, so since it's sorted by ID, it's just going to go in between. But if I had it sorted by start, then it's not. Then it's going to do what you're saying. So then you could say sort by. You could do sort by start, like you have on there, but then permanently renumber tasks, and that'll renumber everything to be sequential, 1, 2, 3 down.
So typically, if I'm going to move some stuff around, I just know that I need to go back in there and hit that.
Right. If it's
Before I,
mhm.
you know.
Right. Mhm. And it won't change the unique ID of the number or of the activity. That's so like if you run it through a software for a comparison, it won't change that number. It doesn't let you change that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you're in view. You went.
Mhm.
You click on sort.
Mhm. Mhm. If you do sort,
You had a window pop up.
so I did sort by. Mhm.
Okay.
Any other questions before we add the activities? Okay. So I'm going to move this over here. So here's a breakout of grade work and durations. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to replace the activities that are, so this is basically what you would do with the template is you have the template, but you want to make it unique to your project. So what we're doing is we're saying that we don't just want the breakdown of 3 activities here. Instead, we want this breakdown right here is what we're saying basically like in this exercise. So replace your grade work section with this list of activities and these corresponding durations. And you can add activities whichever way you'd like. Go ahead and type those in, and then just kind of like, if you have a question, just raise your hand, but just kind of like motion when you're done. I don't know. There's 8 activities. Oh, this is just a Word document. Yeah. Right.
So if I were to do what we just talked about, let's say it's instead of
Mhm.
right clicking and inserting, how to get it back up here?
So you
Wait
can
at the grade work.
so you can like cut and paste. So
Mhm.
you can like click on the whole row number. So like
Yeah.
highlight all 3
No,
rows.
I'm good adding
Or what do you
line,
mean?
But so how do I get if I add it at the end? Like
Yeah.
we talked about,
Mhm.
there's no logic tied to any of this, or will they be to those
Right.
now?
Mhm.
So how do I get back?
You can like cut them and paste them up
Just
there.
move it up there?
Yeah,
Okay,
or you
that's the
can
only
or
one.
you can drag it.
Okay.
The drag is like hard if you're dragging up your whole screen.
Yeah.
It's easy to like let go of it by accident,
Right.
but yeah, you could just drag it up
In
there.
this case, it's just add it where
Right.
it needs to go
Mhm.
because there's no logic to that. I'm like, well, I don't know where to.
Right,
Normally,
right.
when I move the logic, it'll move up.
Yeah, because you have yours sorted by something, like sorted by start probably.
Yeah.
So you could do that and you could tie it in and then renumber from there, whatever's easier.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. If it's easier if you put them like under a heading and then you can collapse the heading and then move that. Like if you collapsed grade work.
Yeah.
And then like so say you made like a heading for grade work, then you can cut and paste that whole heading and it'll paste the whole thing up
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yeah.
What's in it?
Right, right. What? We can change them.
Are we getting everything else?
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
Bringing the work. What?
Right.
It's still not working. Are we tying logic yet or?
Not yet. Yeah. Mhm.
So the start date didn't update. Start date didn't.
Mhm. You have your manual schedule on. Yeah. So if you yeah, because you had the push pins on it. If you change those to auto, then it'll have at least dates with the durations. But the dates themselves won't change until you have the logic, if that's what you mean. Yeah.
So everything I thought.
I know it is. Everything that was already in the template was manual though. Yeah.
Oh.
Just so that you were like forced to put in the durations and everything. Yeah. So you can click this here and then say auto. Okay. Is anybody still working on it? It's okay if you are. Okay. 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 So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have eight lines here under grade work. So if you do have it typed out, so here I have it typed out in a table. In order to do this, it has to be in the same order as the columns. So I have task description and then duration on, I have task description on the left, duration on the right. And in my schedule, I also have the description on the left and duration on the right. So what I can do is I can take this table and I can actually highlight this and I can copy it. And then I'm going to go into Microsoft Project. I'm going to click on this first cell, paste special, and then I'm going to paste my text data. And that puts them in there for me. So if you have something that's already in a spreadsheet, which I feel like usually people do of some sort, you can paste that. So like if you get something from a sub, you can paste it all at the bottom together and then you can move it to where you want it to be. I'll do that one more time. So what I did is I went into the table. I'm just highlighting these that I want. So I'm just going to click and drag to highlight the columns that I want. They have to be in the order. That's the only like trick, is they have to be listed in that order. I'm going to copy. And then I'm only doing the text data. So I'm going to right click in the first cell, paste special, the text data, so that I don't change my formatting. I keep the formatting as is. So then I'm going to say OK. And now there's my new activities. OK. And I'm going to change, I never changed the font. So did we do like a universal change of font to Arial in this? Okay, if you don't, like I have two different fonts here. So if you don't have all the font the same, click on this little square at the top. You guys see that? So click on this to highlight your entire schedule. And then go to Gantt chart format or format at the end. So I clicked on this to highlight the whole schedule, and then go to Gantt chart format or format, and then click on text styles. So highlight the schedule, the format ribbon, and then text styles.
Same. Now it won't go out of it. It's just server's busy.
Okay. Well,
They don't allow it. They can't quick switch.
Turn the computer off and turn back.
all right. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. So you have a question? Just click somewhere else. So I'm going to click on the whole thing. And then, sorry. I'm going to click to highlight the whole thing. And then I'm going to click textiles. And then, do you guys get this now? Okay. So then I have Arial size 10 and apply to all. Okay. And then when I say OK, work. I don't know why it didn't work.
Where was the all?
It's at the top, all. For some reason, it's not changing all of mine.
They are.
Oh, really? Okay. It should just work.
It was good.
I don't know. I don't know why some of these.
Damn it, I know it. Now it's future BK.
I don't know. I'll just change it like this.
Every
Yeah, yeah, and
It could be in copy.
yeah, it could be just as long as it's all matching in the same. Oh, you know,
All of it.
yeah. Okay.
Type it in on the taskbar.
You can. The text style is for every new activity you add. Yeah. And it's supposed to redo the whole thing, and it did last time. I don't know why it didn't. I highlighted by the columns and just changed them all to Arial 10, and then it worked. So then everything that you add, it'll still be in the Arial 10 that we said. I don't know why that didn't work. It worked last week. But is everyone good there? Okay.
You select the whole thing.
Okay. You mean it's the one that you want, right? Okay. Yeah. Is everyone? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because you can highlight everything, make it Arial, but then you have to do the text styles for a new activity to be Arial as well.
So it'll come in as whatever.
It'll come in as Calibri.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So if everybody add an activity just somewhere, and does the font come in as Arial? Okay, so then we're good. Otherwise, it'll be like Calibri 11 or something. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to tie in logic to this section that we just built out. So we have the column shown for predecessors right here. So go ahead and add the column. So we're going to right click on the column right next to predecessors. So right click and insert a column. And insert the column for successors. Does anybody not remember how to add a column? Okay, if you don't remember and you're just not saying it, it is click on the top of something and right click, and then say insert column, and say successors.
So we already have two. First names and add the-
Yeah, you would be replacing that column if you do that, yeah. So it's not renaming like that column itself, it's just putting a different column there instead. If you right click and add a column.
I see, I expand it and it goes, add new column.
Okay, so you can click on that and then you can, it'll give you like a text box drop down if you click on the top of add new column. And then you can start typing in the word successor and you should see it come up. Yep. And if you want to move a column, so say you have your successors in a different spot, so say it's at the end, but you want to change it to be next to predecessors, you can click on the top of the column, and then when you get this 4 arrow, let me make my mouse bigger. Too big. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So click on the top of the column. Is this easier to see, this icon?
Whoa.
Okay. So when you get this icon here, you can click and drag it over to where you want it to be. So I just clicked on the top of the column and you can drag it. And you can see the vertical line that's moving with it to see where it's going to go. So I'm just clicking on the top. And then when I get this symbol, I'm going to drag it over. So now I have predecessors and I have successors. Okay, so then back down into our grade work. So to add a predecessor, there's a few different ways that you can do it. So we're going to tie together the layout and grade pad to underground utilities. So one way that you can do that is you can click on layout and grade pad, hold your control key, and click on underground utilities. So I'm going to click on the layout and grade pad, and then holding the control key on my keyboard, I'm going to click on underground utilities. And then from there, hit this link tool right here, and that will link them together. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. So I clicked on the first activity, and then holding my control key, I'm going to click on underground utilities, and then I'm going to click the link tool. You could do all of them, yeah.
You can highlight all of them. They'll link.
Yes, they'll all be finish to start top down if you highlight all of them. So if you want, this makes it a little bit easier to tie things in, and this is totally your preference. But if you want, right click on the Gantt chart and say layout. So just hover over anywhere in the Gantt chart, right click and say layout. And choose your relationship lines. So choose one of these two. And then when you say okay, I'm going to put the other one on. You'll see the relationship line tied in if that makes it easier for you to see if something's tied in together. So then now I'm going to take this off so you guys don't see that. So now when I tie these two together and when I link it, I can see right away that those are linked together because they have a relationship line. So sometimes people like to have this on for the baseline. I do recommend deleting them or not showing them when you go to print something out, just because it'll be like all up and down the schedule and it makes it hard to read. But if it does make it easier for you while you're working through the logic, then you can keep those on. So again, that was just right clicking here and then saying layout and then choosing the style of relationship lines that you want, or the first one's no relationship lines. Yeah. So now we're going to do the underground utilities to form footings. So if you didn't want to do the control click, you could also take the line number and you can type it into the successor field. So I'm going to say I want form footings line 79 to be the successor to underground utilities line 78. So I can just click on the successor column and just type in 79. And when I hit enter, it ties in together.
So it's just separated by a column,
Mhm.
excuse me, a comma.
Yeah.
So that logic follow one down.
So you'd have to type them in. You mean if you wanted like two successors,
Yeah.
you could say 79, 80. It'll tie both of them in. You could also do, because they'll automatically be finished to start, but if you wanted your form footings to be a start to start plus 3 days maybe, you could type 79 and then SS plus 3. That'll make it a start to start plus 3. The alternative to doing that would be to just have the 79 tied in. And then in your details down here, then you could change this to a start to start plus 3. Oh, I just did the wrong one, but yeah. That works. So if you don't have your details shown, does everyone have the details already on? If you don't, go in the task ribbon and then click this button right here for details. And that pulls them up and shows them. And if yours says resource name and predecessor, does anyone have resource then predecessor? Okay, so just hover your mouse and right click and you can change it. So again, if your details are not shown, then in your task ribbon, it's to the right-hand side, select details. And then if you don't have predecessor successor, then hover down here, right click, and choose predecessors and successors. All right. So is everybody clear on the control click and then also on typing in here? Okay, so another thing you can do, if you have your details window shown, you can also type in the successor here, and I can say 79, and I can tie it in that way. So that's another way that you can tie it in, is actually directly in your details window. The only difference here is in your column, you can do the comma and do multiple at a time. You cannot in the details, because if you did have multiple successors, then they're actually shown on 2 different lines. So that's why you have to still do them individually. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. So you can also do, I'm going to take all of this logic off. So I'm just going to highlight this and hit my delete key. That takes everything out. You can also use your shift key. So I'm going to click on the first one and I'm going to click my shift key and click cure slab. You can also just click and drag. So you can either use your shift key and say cure slab, or you can click and drag on them. But I'm going to click layout and grade pad, shift, cure slab, and I can actually link all of those finish to start at one time. So if you wanted to do that and make them all finish to start, you could tie them in and then adjust your logic to have the lags that you want to show in there. So I'm going to delete that and do that one more time. So I'm going to click on, make this smaller. So I'm going to click on layout and grade pad, hold my shift key, click on cure slab, and then click the link tool. And now they're all tied together, finish to start. if they were not in the order that I wanted, so say that I typed them in just kind of a random order, then I could say, I could use my control key and I can click on them in the order that I want to tie them in. So do you see how mine are now in a different order? So cure slab is up here, rebar slab's here. So I can use my control key and I can click on them in the order that I want to tie them. And then when I hit link, it'll tie them in that order that I just clicked them in. Yes, that's when you would have to manually move it or sort by start. But it'll just tie them in the order that you click them in. And then you can just click and drag this to move it back down. Or you could do sort by and sort by start. But this is where you do get what he was talking about earlier, where they're out of order. So do you see how they're all out of order now? So we have 77, 78, 80, 81, 82, 79, 83, 84. So this isn't in order. So if I said sort and then sort by start, this is a permanently renumber. And then it'll change it for me. No, you can't. That's the only thing that's, yeah, that's the only thing that's kind of a bummer because you can just drag them manually. Sometimes it's easier to do that because if your groupings are not in the order that you want, they can get mixed around. So that's one of the tricky, oh, do you have a question? And then start. Yeah, you could. It'll keep them though, like, so the grade work could then move to be below like the structure if you don't have something tied in. So you're grouping, yeah. Yes. So they'll stay underneath that, but they'll move around like within their own, if that makes sense. So like they'll all stay underneath building, but like you may have like something in, you may have exterior skin between like interior rough and finishes or something. But you can regroup things to make sure that it's the way that you want, and then you can do that. Sort by priority and then start, and it'll stay. Any questions with how we added in the logic so far? Okay, so then the last thing, if you click on a predecessor cell, does anybody have a drop-down arrow? Raise your hand if you have a drop-down arrow.
Yeah.
Or just for one cell. Like I have this drop-down arrow. Does anybody have this?
No.
Okay. You do? And you can click on it and it comes up with the outline structure? Okay.
Mine's like the teacher, mine is right.
Okay, so if you last time nobody had it, but if you do have a drop-down arrow, so I can say, like I'm gonna click on the cure slab and click on the successor drop-down arrow. You can actually like select here and you can use the check mark to select successors if you do have this. So I just clicked on the empty cell for successors, click the drop-down, and I can choose my structures to all follow it. If you don't have it, then you can't. But if you do have it, I don't know why some people don't have that, honestly. But if you ever encounter where it shows up, then you can do that. I think it has something to do with the different versions, like how I had like another check mark under entry bar and you guys didn't. I think there's just some differences. Does yours say Gantt chart format or format? What does yours say? Okay, so you have a different version than everybody else. Does anyone else have Gantt chart format? Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you. But you should be able to have the drop-down arrow. So if you click on Cure Slab, to tie these together, if you click on Cure Slab, then you should be able to have a drop-down in your successor. Anybody, like in the details? But is yours like alphabetical? Okay, so that's not as helpful. But if you do have it, then you could just say primary. I mean, this is part that would just be easier if you had it, but that's the last way to tie in logic that you guys don't see. Yeah, that makes it difficult. Okay. All right.
JV software here.
That's okay. That's okay. I think you guys actually have a newer, like you have a different type of version than me, but a newer one. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Change colors.
Yes. So you have, so go to your format. So does anybody have like different colors showing up when you click on an activity? Okay. So that means that you have, go to your format tab at the end and then click the drop down arrow of task path. Because we did have this in the last class. We went over this a little bit. So click on format and then go to task path and click the drop down and uncheck the ones that have boxes around them. And that will turn it off. You don't,
Oh, there it is.
okay. Is everybody good there? Did you get yours? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other questions so far on the ways that we've tied in logic? Any questions on the methods? Click on like a cell in your table and then click format again. You may have had like your task details form shown.
Under that box.
So task path, and then if one of these has a box around it, so like I just clicked mine, so now I have orange. That's before anything I clicked on. But I have a box around this. So if you have a box around anything like this has, then just check that to deactivate it. Okay, so just uncheck all the boxes.
What does it mean?
So yeah, so it's saying you can have your driving predecessors turn orange and then driven successors turn purple. So if I click on poor footings, orange is everything that's driving poor footings and purple is everything that's driven by. Yeah, it's how you verify your logic and run through it. So it is really helpful, but if it's bothering you, then you can take it off. Yeah. All right. Any questions on the ways to tie in the logic? Are there any ways that you guys tie in logic that I did not go over? All right. So the last way that we didn't go over is you can actually drag. So say I wanted my primary steel to follow the structural steel, or the secondary to follow the primary, I mean. So this one is a little bit more difficult just because you have to move your cursor, but you can actually click on the bar here. So click on the bar and then drag down. Hard to do. Click on the bar, drag down to the next bar. So it's really small, but do you see how it's outlined when I clicked on it? So I have this cursor, I'm clicking on the bar, and you see how the bar itself has a box around it? So then I'm going to click on the next one. I just got a box around structural steel. It's like really small, but there. Do you guys see that? So I'm going to have the box around structural or around secondary, and that ties them together. So this one, I wish I could zoom in more to show it to you guys, but basically, here, I'll do it with layout and grade. I'm going to click on this bar, and then I'm going to drag the logic. Do you guys see that better? And then that makes it finish to start. I'm not good at this one. This one's harder for me. I usually don't type things in. Usually, yes. Sometimes it will, if you're like at the very edge of it, what we're going to say, it'll go finish. Yes, correct. That I'm not sure because it's like, right. So this says finish to start link. Yeah. So it looks like this one's wanting to be finished to start, whichever way I tie it. So finish to start. And then I wonder if, I don't know if this will work. I don't know what happens if I click on this side. Yeah, I guess it's just finish to start default.
Yeah.
So, all right. You can, yeah, you can drag out a duration like this. The only thing here is you have to be careful because like this wants to be like 6.5 days. Like you could do half days with this. So just be careful if you do drag out a bar to change a duration that you're not doing a half day. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, any other questions on that? Okay. With the link tool, not with the bars, but you can do multiple with the other ways.
Yeah, with the Photoshop.
Right. But you can't do multiple with like the clicking and dragging. No. All right. So now our next step, so we built out the grading section. We have all the grade work. So now the next step would be, do we want to overlap any of the logic? Do you want your rebar slab to overlap with the forming, like you form for a few days? Okay. So if we wanted to change it to say 2 days into forming, you start rebar, or 1 day into forming, you're going to start rebar. You can either change this manually by typing in 81 SS plus 1. That's one way that you can do it, is you can type it in manually and you'll see it change. Otherwise, the other way to do it is to go into your details, and under your details, change the type to start, and then type in a lag of 1. Any questions on that?
You don't have to type in day on that.
Correct. Yeah, you don't have to type in day. I don't use them. They're not like proper, so I don't use them. If I mean that, well, no, like I mean like they're not technically proper, but a lot of people do use them. I just personally don't, because if you had something, so say you had your form slab for 4 days, and then so say you had oh, I need to plug this in. I need to switch this to the HDMI so I can plug in my computer. No, it's fine. Okay. Okay. So if you had so say you had the form slab for 4 days, and then you had the rebar slab as a like finish to start -3. Oh, I did an equal sign. Okay, so this is the same date because it's equivalent to a relationship of a start to start plus 1. Zoom in on here. So I still have the rebar slab. You can see the arrows now going backwards instead of going forwards because it's now a negative lag. So you can do the start to start plus 1, you can do the finish to start -3, and you'll get the same date. So I'm just going to change this here just to show that it's the same date. So if I did the start to start plus 1, then it's not going to move. It's still the same. So I'm going to put it back to the finish to start -3 days. So say that your form slab only took 2 days instead of 4 days. So I'm going to type in a 2 there. Now you already missed your start date of rebar because now it's earlier. Does everyone see that? How it just went earlier? So yeah, form slab was supposed to be 2 days and you were going to start and overlap those. But then when it only took, or supposed to be 4, when it only took 2, now you've missed your start date already. So that's like a backwards logic, like backwards tracing. So if you did, instead, if you had the start to start plus 1, and then if it only takes 2 days, your start date of the rebar slab is still the same. So that's the like backwards tracing reason why I don't use it. But I mean, I'm not here to tell you don't use it. So it's up to you guys if you do or not. But that's just it can cause you issues if you use it if anything is shorter than planned.
The computer's about to die.
I'm hitting my Control S. Yeah, but I plugged in my computer, so now it's okay. But yeah, I'm just hitting Control S on my keyboard. I hit save like all the time, like after I do anything, just because I've had my computer die before and I've lost my file, so now I just like obsessively hit save. But yeah, any other questions on this overlapping logic? Any like logic questions like that? Okay. Is there anything else in this section that you would like to overlap or have different than what we have shown here? Okay, we'll probably leave that.
We want to drill in the rebar.
Okay. So does everybody have still the column for subcontractor? Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Mhm.
Copy that.
Right. So if your buildings are the same, you can actually collapse the entire building and you can copy and then paste your entire building. So then you'll keep everything tied in. If you are going to do that, you'd want to tie everything within your building together that's under that subheading, but it will take external ties with it. So say that they're following like some sort of site work, rough grading or something, it's going to keep that logic tie with it. So you just want to make sure that you don't have anything tied to the like external links that you don't want to carry over. Does that make sense? Yeah, so like if you had just the grade work and you copied and pasted the grade work, you're going to also carry over the tie from Cure Slab to structure in the other building. So you'd have to delete that. But yeah, you can just collapse one section, right click and copy, and then right click and paste that whole section, or you can collapse your whole building and do the whole building. Does that answer your question? Okay. So I'm going to delete the second building. Basically, you can copy and paste sections, but I would recommend collapsing it first so that you don't, because sometimes it'll change around your logic ties if you don't collapse it first, just depending on what settings you have selected. But if you copy the whole section collapsed, and then say I scroll down here and I'm going to paste it. So now I have the whole grade work section that I can then put in my other area.
But, I guess it's following up with this, but like making that one tie-in with an external,
Mm-hmm.
then it ties all that logic back in.
So it'll keep it tied in with like, it'll keep it tied in with whatever's kicking off the first building, but then you'll have to tie in like what relationship you want between the first building and the second building. You don't have to, you can paste it and then delete it. Mm-hmm. So I right clicked and copied, and then I'm just gonna right click and paste. Right. Yes. So they're going to tie in with the logic with the paste. So that's when you collapse them, like when you collapse the section, because right now, this grade work, I don't have this tied into anything. There's no successor on the whole chain, and there's no predecessor, no successor. But say I had it tied to your building pad. So I'm going to say building pad, building A, and say that this is building A. So then if I tie in building pad, building A to the start of layout and grade pad and tied it together. So now I have this specifically tied into building pad for building A, which is this building. So now if I was to collapse this, and I'm going to right click and copy. So I just collapsed the grouping, right click and copy. And if I scroll down here and then I paste it, it's still going to be tied in to the building pad for building A. So then I would need to change it to the building pad for building B. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, we can go over more later too. We can duplicate our building and go through that process. Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, we can go over that then. We won't do that today.
Page 83.
Okay, so okay, any other questions? Any other questions so far? You can also add, if you want, you can add the layout and grade pad to follow building pad. So scroll up to building pad under earthwork. And this is where it's helpful to use your control key because then they're not next to each other. So click on building pad A or building pad, and then scroll down and using your control key, click on layout and grade pad, and then link those together. Any other questions on this grade work section and everything we did here? Okay, the only other thing that I'll mention with the logic, so right now, we have the form slab as a start to start +1 with the rebar slab. So this is called an open finish. Has anyone heard of an open finish before? It's okay, most people probably haven't. Okay, so do you see how there's no logic tie? There is a successor on it. I'm looking at form slab here. There is a successor, but there's actually nothing right here coming off of it on the relationship lines. So that's called an open finish. So if the form slab for some reason was to take way longer, so say that this form slab is taking like 10 days for some reason to do instead of the 4. So, oh, I did the wrong activity. So 10 days to do, it's not going to actually push anything out. So do you see how this duration extended, but it didn't push anything?
So it's linked to the substantial complete, this case, which is.
Not even that. It wouldn't even push your substantial. It's just, it has the successor, but it doesn't have anything with the finish pushing it out. But it would, I mean, it would say that your overall project completion is later. Yeah. So if you had this also tied into a finish to start with core slab, and you linked those together, so now it's no longer, it's not pushing out the date of core slab, but it is, it's not pushing out the date because it's still 7/12, not after 7/11. But now if this took 10 days, it's going to push out the core slab. Does that make sense? So that's the only risk that you run if you do overlap your logic with start to start, is you do have those open finishes to just be mindful of.
Negative flow.
So yeah, so whatever logic you tie in, you just want to make sure that it is going to push out the next sequence that it should, so that if you have a delay, you don't have to modify anything to show that delay, if that makes sense. It'll be critical because the first day of it is critical. So it just depends how you have your logic tied in.
So in this case, what is the easiest way to find those kinds of
You could, I like run it through a software to see, you can just like look at your relationship line, see what's missing, or you can search in your successors for anything that's a start to start relationship and just make sure there's also a finish to start on there as well. Any questions on that? Okay. I use Schedule Validator. It's just like a website, and then run it through. It's free. It's free if you're not like comparing schedules. It's free to just run single schedules through it. It's just called schedulevalidator.com. All right. Any other questions here? Okay. So now we can either go through the process of adding our subcontractors to this section, or we can go through the structure and then add the subcontractors later. Do you guys have a preference? Anyone?
I mean,
Oh, it's just your preference of what order you want to go in. Like we can do each section, add our subcontractors, and then go to structure, do the same thing, or we can add the subcontractors after we're done. Okay. Okay. The only thing, well, so we'll go over that. We'll go over that later. So now we'll go through the structure. So we made the grade work custom to what we want it to. So now we're going to choose which structure our building has. So does somebody want to choose what our building has for the structure?
Structural steel.
Okay. So you guys want structural steel?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I am? I'm sorry. I did not know that. Has that been the whole time? Oh, okay. It's okay. Sorry. Okay, what about now? Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so we're saying that our structure is structural steel framing. So now we don't want these sections anymore for the pre-engineered metal building, CMU, tilt wall. We don't want this because they don't apply to our project. So you can either click and drag all of them, or you can collapse the section and then delete them one by one. So whichever way you want to do, if you want to click and drag and delete, you can do that. or you can collapse the sections and you can delete the sections.
But if we delete the section, everything else.
Correct, yes. If you delete the summary heading, everything deletes under it. So like if I just click wood frame and I delete the wood frame, it says you're going to delete the subtasks, and I say okay.
Right, click each blue one also.
Correct.
Right?
Mhm. Yeah. Any questions on how we just deleted? Everyone good with that? Okay. Okay. So then is everybody good with, does everyone just have the one structural steel framing now? Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now that we have the structural steel framing, so now we decide if we want to modify any of these activities. Do we want to change the naming convention or the breakdown of this activity? Somebody just like make a decision.
Oh,
No, okay. So then what we need to do then is we need to plug in our durations that we need for each one. So what duration do we need for primary steel? Someone can just make it up.
Give 3 days. In 3
45
days.
We're building in.
Okay. And okay, we're gonna do 10 days. And then what about secondary steel? 3. And then joist and decking?
5.
Okay. And then structural light gauge framing. Okay. Okay. And then now we would do the same thing and tie them in. What order do you want them to go in? And do you want any overlap? Okay.
So it would be primary
Okay.
and joist,
Okay.
and then light gauge,
Okay.
framing up there, but secondary steel, which is supplementary,
Mhm.
never finishes.
Okay.
Long for a long.
Okay.
So they don't have an overlap in reality.
Okay. So you want primary first and then joist and decking and then structural light gauge framing and then your secondary. Okay.
Well, secondary would be going on, you could tie it really to.
Okay.
Once that goes on, that's.
Okay, so you're going to go primary, joist and decking, light gauge framing. So I'm going to click on those 3 in that order. So I'm going to use my control key. I'm going to go primary, joist and decking, structural light gauge framing, and I'm going to choose the link tool. So now I tied those 3 together. So now the secondary steel, do you want that to also follow the primary and go with joist and decking or follow joist and decking?
It would go, yeah, it would go.
Okay,
light gauge framing.
okay. So then, okay, so I'll click on the erect primary steel and then go to secondary. So now that's starting the same time as the joist and decking, but then do you want the duration to be longer and finish also on 7/1?
So just for this exercise, yes.
Mhm. Okay.
We don't know what it was.
Okay, so then we're just gonna add the duration and make it a total of 7 days or however many days it needs. What is it? 8 days? I don't know. 9 days. I don't know. It should be 7. We must have one on a different calendar.
I mean,
Oh, we did a 6-day work week before on that. I forgot. So I'm gonna say none for that. Okay, so we'll do 7 days so that now it's finishing together. So there's no constraint that's making it finish the same day as the light gauge framing because our constraint's based on the start of primary steel being done. But we're just looking at the duration, making those match. Anything else with the steel sequence that we want to modify or make look different? Okay, perfect. And then are we doing a 1-story or 2-story? We're just going to do 1-story? Okay, sounds good. Okay, so now we'll do the same thing. So erect primary steel, when are you going to start that? Okay, do you want to do it after your footings or after your cure slab? Someone just pick. We'll just do. Okay, so we'll do it after cure slab. So then you can either control click on these activities or you can type the successor number in and tie those together. So now it's starting to look more like a schedule. So now we have the grade work done, we have the steel done, and then we would move on to the exteriors. So then we also need what's going to follow secondary steel, what's going to follow light gauge framing. And so let's go through our exterior shell together. What kind of exterior do you want to say that this has? Okay, so EIFS, plaster, stucco, and then do you have any masonry at all? Okay, and do you have the exterior metal panels? Okay, I'm gonna delete that. We'll say we don't have that. Do you have, so basically you're gonna go through, you're gonna delete out the ones you don't have, and you're gonna add in any details of ones that you do have. So you're gonna do that, modify the duration or modify the activities to match what you have in your project, and then you're gonna plug in your durations. So how many days for roofing? 7. HVAC equipment,
It's set in 1 day.
Okay.
HVAC.
1 day, okay. Sheathing and waterproofing. Okay, masonry veneer. Okay, EIFS plaster stucco. Storefront. Glazing. And caulking and sealants. I don't know what you guys said, but okay. Okay, so then what order do you want to tie these into? What order do you want to do these? Okay, so you want to tie them all just in this order. Okay, so I'm just going to click on the first one, hold my shift key, click on the last one, and click the link tool. And when will you start the roofing? Okay, so I'm going to click on decking, and I'm going to tie that to install roofing. Okay. And then we also are missing successors for the secondary steel and the light gauge framing. What do you want to follow the secondary steel? If you had to pick something.
Well, I would say exterior framing. You have to kind of something.
Okay. And we don't even have an exterior framing, do we?
Or sheathing and water.
Okay.
But install structural light gauge framing and assume.
Mhm. Okay, so you want secondary steel to go to the light gauge framing?
Yeah.
Sure, okay. And then light gauge framing to sheathing and waterproofing. This is just for the exercise of just making sure everything's tied in together in your schedule. Okay. So then the next thing that, or does anyone have any questions, or am I going too fast through the ties? Okay. Okay, so now we'll go through our interiors. And when is the MEP overhead rough-in going to start? Okay, so click on joist and decking, and then tie that to the MEP overhead rough-in.
When you go to decking there,
Mhm.
and like you said, HVAC to start halfway through it, you show progression, whatever, I can't read the day, 5 days.
Mhm.
So like, at day 3 days, you put, completion 500.
So you could have, what do you mean?
For your completion, or there's a sliding scale within there.
So what you could do is you could say, so it's 5 days. You can say that the overhead rough-in is gonna start after 3 days.
Yeah, so double click. Go in there, finish complete, you can put it 3 days, 4 days, 10%.
Could, but that would be when you're updating it. Yeah. Because otherwise you want to hold when you're going to start it just based on if it hasn't started yet. Yeah.
The roofing, we're going to start. It's halfway.
Mhm.
What did you do?
So first, just tie them together. So I just did it actually from the decking to the overhead rough-in. I also have the roofing after the decking, but I haven't finished the start. Do you want the decking to overlap with the roofing? Okay.
Typically will.
Okay. So then we'll say that the decking is 5 days, or the joist and decking is 5 days, roofing is 7. So we can say that the roofing will start maybe 2 days in or 3 days in to the 5.
More than that, you got to get inspections. There's a lot in reality.
We'll say 4 days in, you're going to start it. Okay, so then once it's already finished to start, then you can just tie it to a start to start plus 4. And then we can say that your overhead rough-ins are also going to start 4 days in. Or do you want to make that something different? It doesn't matter. Okay, so then for joist or for the overhead rough-in, we're also going to do that as a start to start plus 4. Okay. Is everybody good so far on what we've done? I don't want to go too fast, but I don't want to bore you guys. Everybody good? Okay, so now let's take our overhead rough-ins and let's actually break them out into each individual rough-in so that when we assign our subcontractor, we only have one subcontractor that assigns to this activity. Does that make sense? Okay, so we'll say that the overhead rough-in then also goes to, what's the successor of overhead rough-in? Okay. Okay, for this, do you want to just say ceiling grid? Okay, we're just going to say ceiling grid.
Those two don't align, sorry.
Okay, so now we have, so basically this is just for the ways, so you could either add activities to make this, okay, we're going to say MEP overhead rough-in, and we'll add an activity, and we could say, okay, this one's going to be mechanical, and then we're going to add another one and say, okay, this one's going to be your plumbing overhead rough-in. You could also, so these have no logic on them. You could also copy the one that we have tied in. You could copy that, and then you could paste it, and that will paste with the same logic. So then you already have it tied in, so now you can paste with the same logic, and then you can change them to mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So it doesn't matter, it's whichever way you prefer. If you did want to have one activity and rather than copy and paste, you could also click on the cell for predecessor and you can actually drag up the logic. So I'll wait until you guys are done adding them and then I'll do that one more time. Okay. Wait here. Okay, so does everybody have 3 activities now? One for mechanical, one for plumbing, one for electrical? Okay, so if you did not copy and paste, if you added activities, what you can do, so I have this first one that was the original activity. This is tied in, so I can actually click on the cell that has the predecessors already, and I can actually drag this down to use the same logic and carry it over. I'm going to do the same with the successor. I'm going to drag it down and carry that same logic over. So I'll do that one more time. So if you did not copy and paste where the logic went with it, you can click on the cell with the logic and you can drag it down. You can actually do both at one time. So I'm going to click on both cells to highlight them on the logic that I want, and I can drag that same logic down.
So it'll be the same exact logic, same number, doesn't do like the same.
Correct. Yeah, it'll be exactly the same. You could also, instead of dragging, you can also highlight and copy the cells, and then I can paste them and paste that logic in. So if it wasn't something that was directly below it, you could copy and you can paste it. And then you can also change your durations to be whatever durations you want. Yeah, and it'll still hold the same logic. All right. And let's do a couple more breakouts. So let's break out the tape bed and paint into drywall, tape and texture, and paint. Let's also break out the fixtures and trim into the different MEPs. So we're breaking out the drywall into drywall, tape and texture, and paint. And we're breaking out our MEP fixtures and trim, just like we did with the overhead rough-in, and we're breaking out the different MEPs. Okay, so we're gonna break those out. So we're gonna break out the drywall, tape and texture and paint, and we're gonna break out the different MEPs. And then from there, using your own discretion, add durations, like plug in durations for everything, and then tie in your logic through the rest of the interior finishes.
Breakout, indenting,
No, we're just making them 3 activities. So I have electrical fixtures. Yeah, just making them individual so that when we go to add the subcontractor, there's just 1 per activity. Okay, any questions? Well, so that you don't have multiple subcontractors assigned to 1 activity. Yeah. Okay.
He acts like he doesn't have you on the site.
get to utilize it every day.
Sees it all the time.
I'll have to do this.
Okay, so just using your own, so this is just your own choice, but just add durations to the rest of interior finishes and add your logic so that everything has a predecessor and everything has a successor. Does that make sense? Okay. I can walk around and help if you guys have any questions. You're supposed to, so basically finish tying in your schedule on your own and just choose.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay. No one was talking, so I heard it. So basically, so does everyone make sense? Does that make sense what the task is that we're doing? No one's answering. Okay, sounds good. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand.
This is like our sub.
Sorry.
You know what I'm saying? It's just in reverse. We ask questions, they all.
No one responds, yes. Sorry. Okay, so you've got it. You have a question? You can right click and you can say hide. Hide column. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. So those are, so they're manually scheduled. So click on the top left and to highlight everything and then say auto. It's right about in the middle. Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. You also do have a different formatting on your bars. You don't have the names. Do you want to change that? Okay,
I mean, he does, he just didn't want to mess with it.
that's fine.
She don't know. She'll probably be able to.
Click on one.
How do you get it scheduled?
My uncle owns our company, so yeah. I went to college for mechanical engineering, but oh really? Nice.
Well, but he went to college.
That's okay. That's okay. No, I wanted to be a consultant of some sort. So I did an internship with him and ended up liking it. So yeah. SMU. Yeah. I'm a Mustang. I'm not like too attached, but you know, I did like it. It was a good school. So it's not like UT people. My brother-in-law's the Longhorn. It's like,
A&M.
oh yeah. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get the whole rival thing, but Yeah. No, I got my brother-in-law for Christmas. I got an A&M coasters just to, just to mess with him. So I can't not do that. So
Only new members of ACC that won't be.
Meeting adjourned.
He thought about that one for a while. We're ready to fire up though.
Don't say it again.
Oh, yeah, I'd be glad to say it again. Things they locks up on.
sometimes it does. So you can click on, if you have your time, click on File, and then go down to Options. And then in the Display ribbon of options, or it's not in Display, I'm sorry, it's in General. In General, it's under Date Format. So if you click the drop down of Date Format, you can choose something that doesn't have time. It's a duplicate.
How much of the throw it off when you put it in half days, like 7.5?
It'll make things start and finish on the same day. So it'll make things start and finish the same day. So it'll make something finish at noon and the next activity start at noon. So it just reads like misconception of that. Mhm. You could. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you could do that. Right. So the dates will, like, the sequence will be right, but the dates might not be right until you're done. Does that make sense? I mean, you could, but it's not, I would hide that column unless it's like important for someone to see. Usually for the subcontractors, it's just so you can like filter for only their work and send them that.
Okay, it's just so you find their stuff. They're working.
Right. Mhm. Yeah, so you can like check to see if you're trade stacking. It's more beneficial when you have like multiple buildings or multiple floors to make sure you don't have them on 2 floors at once.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they don't have one work progress.
Right. Right. But you do want to see like you may want to see relevant things. So like the plumber and electrician, you may want like all MEPs on one printout or something. You could filter for just that. So it's just for your own use of like maneuvering through the schedule. I'm eating chips, so the mic's probably like hearing me eat the chip. Oh well, sorry. Is everybody done? Is everybody done tying it in? Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, are you guys ready? Maybe? Yes? Okay. All right. So let's go on to the next step. So everybody has their schedule. Everyone has their schedule tied in where you now have a full chain, right? Everyone good there? Okay, so now this is where you would want to make the decisions where, okay, do you need your glazing done before you start up the units? And you'd want to make sure that you have those ties in. So you have right now, so we have, okay, so your millwork is going to be when you're done painting. It's going to be whatever you chose to tie it after. Your millwork's going to start then. But then you would also say, oh, well, we also need the HVAC startup done before millwork. And to start up the HVAC, you need the glazing done or you need the storefront in. So this is where you would then make those decisions with, okay, what's going to be for dry-in? And you'd want to then make the ties that are not just within this section, but things that tie in from somewhere else as well. So we'll say, okay, your storefront needs to be done and your glazing needs to be done before you can start up air because you want the building dried in. So that's where you would then take your building and you'd make the relationship ties that you want that are external to a different, not external because they're still in the building, but they're not within interior finishes. Does that make sense? Okay, sounds good. So now let's make subgroupings. Let's break up the interiors into interior rough-ins and then to interior finishes. So one thing that you can do is you can actually click and drag on everything that you want to go underneath one, and you can choose summary. And that's going to summarize those together. So I'm going to do that one more time. So I want to make subheadings. So I'm going to change this to just interiors. So I want to make a subheading for interior rough-ins and then a subheading for interior finishes that's underneath interiors. Does that make sense? Okay, so one way that you could do that is you can actually add a task above mechanical rough-in and you can title it interior roughs. And just like we did last time, you can indent everything underneath it that you would like underneath it. So I'll do that one more time. So I added an activity above mechanical rough. So right click and insert task. And then I'm going to call it interior roughs. And then to make it a subheading, I'm going to indent underneath it what I want to go as an interior rough-in. So now I can collapse interior roughs and I have that as its own subsection of interiors. And if I want to copy the color, so I want my color formatting to match, you can use the format painter to take it from somewhere else. Hard to do with a big mouse. I know. And you can color it. So I'll do that one more time. So I'm going to take this out. So I'm adding an activity above mechanical rough-in, and I'm going to call it interior roughs. So that's step one. And then now I'm indenting underneath it to make it a summary task. I'm indenting the interior rough-in activities underneath that.
I think Billy's gonna need it one more time.
Okay. Well, we're going to do it again with the finishes, so we're fine there. And then if I want to take the color so that my color coding is consistent, I'm going to click on one that I want to take it from. So I'm going to click on this structural steel framing. I'm going to choose Format Painter, which is in the task ribbon. And I'm going to click on Interior Roughs. So now I have my subheading for Interior Roughs that matches my color coding, and it's underneath Interiors. Any questions on that?
You can't scroll with the brush.
No, you can't. No, but you can click on something and then scroll before you hit the paintbrush. Yeah. So if you click on it here and then scroll, then you can use your paintbrush and paint it. I know. Mhm. You can do that too. Mhm. Yeah, it's just a different way of doing it. Yeah. So if you wanted to, if you heard his question, if you want to do it, so we could do it we could do it the same way and have the indent outdent to make something a summary task. You can also click and highlight. So now click and highlight from drywall down everything through owner furnished equipment. So from drywall down to owner furnished equipment, highlight those. And then it was in the middle. It was towards the middle. So just whatever is your last one before startup and commissioning, highlight those, and then click on summary in the task ribbon. So we're taking the whole grouping, and then so highlight the whole grouping and select summary, and that will summarize all of those tasks. Okay, so I'll do that one more time. I'm going to click and drag drywall through the last interior finish. And then I'm going to click on summary to summarize all of those into their own grouping. Does that make sense? Okay, does anyone want to see it again?
How do they summarize them?
So it's a new, so when we went here and we indent, oh yeah, so well, when we added an activity the way we did it the first way, then we turned it into a summary task by indenting things underneath it. If you want to instead initially just, well, right now, so like interior rough-ins is the same level as all of this. So I'm going to highlight those and I'm going to choose to summarize them. So when I summarize them, it's going to put them underneath that same level. Does that make sense? So I'm going to highlight everything and then summary, and that puts them all underneath a new summary. And then instead of new task, it says new summary task. And then I'm going to call this interior finishes. Okay. And then same thing with the format painter. I'm going to take the format and format paint this. Okay, any questions on this? Is anyone just like very lost? It's okay if you are. Okay. Okay. So now let's make one more summary for the startup and commissioning and final clean, and let's call it closeouts. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to highlight these two activities. So I'm going to highlight startup and commissioning and highlight final clean together. So just click and drag on those two, and I'm going to summarize them to make a closeouts. And the idea of the summaries are just, it makes it a little bit easier to read. So now our interiors is just a little bit easier to follow with having, if I can click on the right thing, with having a grouping underneath it for closeouts. Then you don't have the lines that are just a different indentation within the same area. Does that make sense? No. Yes, no, maybe. Okay. Okay, so now it's just easy. It's just visually, it makes it easier to follow if you have the subgroupings and if you have everything underneath an outline level. Okay. And we'll say that startup commissioning is going to be, we'll say after owner furnished equipment, you'll do startup and commissioning. And we'll say after your last activity in the interiors, you'll do the final clean. And I'm just going to give these each durations just to have them in there. Okay, so any questions on this process of how we took the template, we modified the activities to match our project, and then we plugged in our durations that we got from the input of the subcontractors or from wherever you got those durations. So we took the template that had no durations and just set activities that were a template of activities. We made it our own specific activities for our project. And then we tied everything together that we have. We used our structure that we have. And then we modified our interior section to match how we wanted it to look. So does anyone have any questions on the process that we've taken so far? Okay. Do you want to make this building, do you want to copy it and make a second building? Okay. Okay. Okay, so now let's go through and let's add our subcontractors into our activities for the building. I'm gonna collapse everything that's not the building just to consolidate.
Is this standard?
No, it's just so that it's just so you can use filters and stuff so that you can filter for only certain subs.
But then when there's multiple subs on each?
So that's when you would want to break it out into two. Depending on what you're wanting, like I would say it makes it easier to break it out into two because say your underground utilities, if you have plumbing and electrical, but then your plumbers showed up 2 weeks late, then you're able to track that as its own delay without making it seem like electrical also took longer. So it just kind of is easier to reflect those sorts of things, but it depends on, your relationship with the subcontractor, with the owner, whatever, and what makes it easier. But it makes it easier just to say, or even if maybe you have like 25 days here, but they don't both have 25 days, then you can break it out into the duration that they individually have.
They're very crybaby like that.
It's also on the type of schedule. If I'm doing
Right.
a master schedule, I don't want to break it.
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, it depends what you're wanting. Yeah. All right. So with that, go through your building and assign your subcontractor to each activity. So in this case, I am going to say, I get to underground utilities, say, actually, this is 2. So what I can do is keep the logic in here and keep the duration. I'm going to copy this whole activity. So I'm going to click the whole row of underground utilities and copy it. You don't? Does anyone else have it? Okay.
Insert it.
Yeah, so just insert. So insert and insert the column for subcontractor, which should be text 1. But if you didn't follow the group 2 class from last time, then we didn't make it. Okay, so add the column for text 1. And then, so do you have the text 1? Okay, so insert column for text 1. I'm gonna choose a different one. Just start typing in the word text. And then, okay, so add text 1. And then on the top of it, triple click the column heading and you can rename it. I'm gonna rename it to building. So now when you search for subcontractor, it should say subcontractor parenthesis text 1. Okay. So I'm going to say layout and grade pad, say that's what sub, you can just like pick something, just, it doesn't matter. For layout and grade pad. I'm just gonna say earthwork and just make it like generic. And then underground utilities, this is where I'd say, oh, I have 2 here. I'm gonna copy the whole row. And then I'm gonna paste the whole row so that I keep the logic with it and I keep the duration. Does that make sense? Because I just want to totally duplicate it and make 2 identical activities. Then I can rename it to underground electrical utilities and underground plumbing utilities. And now I can say, okay, now individual activities have their own subcontractor. I spell plumbing right. Does that make sense? Okay, so now go through, and this is all just like making up whatever you want, it doesn't matter, but go through your building and assign the subcontractors that you want to each activity. You can do the same fill down methods that we used for the logic. So say I can take this concrete and I can drag this down through Cure Slab to assign those together. I could also hit my copy and I can paste it. I've seen people do it before. I'm honestly not sure how to do it. I think you have to use not a text field. I think you have to like create a code field and then you can. Because like the resources, if you did use resources, it comes up that way. So I think you have to like modify a setting. So I'm not sure, but I'll see if I can figure it out before next time. So then, so like you can copy electrical from here. I'm gonna do Control C and copy it. And then I can go down to electrical rough and paste it. So those are just like little ways that you can make it faster if you don't want to retype it in. But go through and using whichever names you want, assign subcontractors.
Huh? JC? Yeah, that's the South. Not Martin Thomas.
Who's Jason Owen?
The subcontractor, the column. If you insert a column, and do you have one that's called subcontractor? Okay. Yeah, so insert a column. Okay, so then choose text 1. So type in text and you'll see text 1. So then start typing the word text. And then do you see text 1? Okay, and then you see it now though?
Yeah.
So-
COL text 1 UMN.
Oh, you're already renaming it.
Oh, hit escape. Hit your escape key. So then, oh, so you have the subcontractor.
I typed that in.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how you do it. So now just add your own values. So then like scroll down to the building. And then you can just add the subcontractor name that you want.
Oh, in field.
Yeah, just in the field. Yeah, you just type it into the column.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. When you move the column?
All it does is change the title, stuff in this home beneath it. Follow over. Each time we subcontractor, follow over to the web. So when he does that, all the subcontractors stay in the original. Put the title in.
What about when you like scroll a little bit? Like when you scroll a little bit, does it fix it? That's really strange. So click on the whole column top and then now move it. Click undo. And then are you only highlighting like part of it or something? And then move it over? I don't know. That's really strange.
Mine does the same thing.
Really?
But what I do, I just insert another column, start typing in subcontractor.
I
and
figured
then
I'd just
it'll-
delete that one.
Yeah,
just
you should.
insert it where you can see it.
Yeah.
Type contract, populate it, and then when you're done, hide it, and then anytime you pull it up.
Yeah, it's almost like you have part of the field selected.
It did it. So I have to drag it all the way to the edge.
Okay.
No, you got it.
And then just copy and paste. So like highlight the cells that didn't carry over.
No, I didn't type those in.
Oh, you didn't type. Oh, so okay, so it did do it.
So yeah, it moved these ones over.
Okay.
But it did it before. You moved it all the way over here to this edge.
Mhm.
It didn't work.
Okay. Okay, so you just like replace the data probably.
Oh.
Okay. So if you're still working through assigning them, that's okay. And I think this may answer your drop-down question. Once you have it typed in, then you do have a drop-down at the top. Is that the kind of drop-down you wanted? Or you wanted a drop-down in your cell to like choose?
Drop down in the cell, so you can
Okay.
choose from your-
Okay, yeah, that one is like a different type of field. So is anybody done? Okay. So if you're done, if you're still working on it, that's okay. But if you're done, this is where you can select the actual drop-down arrow that's at the top of the column. And you can choose if you only want to show some. So let's click the drop-down arrow and let's click the select all to unselect everything. And then let's choose your electrical, your mechanical, and your plumbing. So let's choose to just show the MEPs. So you can click the check mark to just show the ones that you want. And then say OK. And now you have your schedule filtered for just those. Does that make sense? Okay. So you can do that with, you can do that with whatever you want. You can say, I just want to show concrete. And you can print out their schedule. Then you just click the drop-down arrow and you can either say clear filter from subcontractor, or you can select all. And then you'll get rid of that filter. Any questions on that? Any other filters that you guys would like to see? Yeah. So you could do, yes. So you can do the view, and then you can choose your filter for date range. And then, yes. So I'm going to say, let's say date range, and let's say, what's the start of my schedule? It's June. So let's say that I want everything from June 1st to August 31st. I'm doing like a 3-month look ahead. So here's my 3-month look ahead. And let's say that I only want my 3-month look ahead for steel. That's how you would mix and match. Yeah. And then this is your full 4-week look ahead or 3-month, whatever I did. And then you can say your drop down, no filter, and that gets rid of the overall. You can also click on the drop down arrow of subcontractor. I think we maybe did this last time. but you can say group on this field. So I'm going to click the drop down of subcontractor and group on this field. I'm going to collapse no value, but then I see this is where the relationship lines, you probably want to take them off. But now I can see if I'm potentially trade stacking something. I'm going to turn those off. So if I had multiple buildings, this is where I could say, okay, let's go to the millwork and let's see, or what did I call it, casework? Let's see if you have your casework going in multiple buildings at the same time. This is where you could identify that if you do have different buildings or different floors or something. But you can also sort by that and just make sure like, okay, this is a lot of steel going on at the same time. Or you can say, okay, for electrical or any of my electrical tasks going on at the same time, and you can just double check there. Or if you're, you know, if you're having issues, you can see any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. It will. So the resources just also will like have other things in the background that will change durations and stuff on you if you don't have all of your settings right. If all of your settings are like perfect for that resource, it's fine. But there's just like the risk of it. Yeah. So it's more just like risk-based with using the resources.
So you're saying it could on these stacked
Yes, if you hit the wrong button, yeah. Yeah, or if your settings are based on letting resources drive your dates, then it could change it. Yeah. So if it's set up correctly for the resources, then it's fine. It's just risky. Yeah, yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right. So then the last, I'm going to click. So if you want to get rid of your grouping, click on the subcontractor and say no group, and that will take you back to your schedule. So click the drop down, and if it says group on this field, and then you can select the drop down again and say no group. And that should put your schedule back to normal. Everybody good there? Okay, so then the last thing that we'll do, we're actually going to go back over that tracing logic again that we went over earlier. So click on your format or Gantt chart format at the end. If you don't have critical tasks selected, go ahead and check mark for critical tasks, and you should see part of your schedule turn red. So that's just in the Gantt chart format, and then check mark for critical, and your critical tasks will turn red. All right.
Like my entire thing reset.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, perfect. So now if you go to the task path, this is what we were looking at earlier. So click on your task path and then click on driven predecessors. So it's in format, task path, driven predecessors. So this is where you could scroll down to say, let's look at your paint activity. So if you click on paint, then it's going to turn orange everything that's driving that paint activity. So any activity that you click on, it's going to highlight in orange the path that leads up to that activity. So now that we have our schedule tied in, it's a little bit easier to see, you know, what those are saying. And then same with the purple with driven successors. So I'll say, okay, what's everything that comes off pouring my slab? And I can see that it's actually everything in the building because everything has to follow pouring slab. What comes after the interior walls? Then you can see everything that turns purple is everything that comes after your walls. So then you can say, okay, maybe I'm missing a tie. So after ceiling tile, nothing else is following that. That's because it's not driven by it, because you have a gap and you're working on your exterior shell. So this is just for you to check your own work. This is for you to see as you're going through your schedule, if it makes sense. So you'll say, okay, what's following roofing? Does the path that just turned purple make sense for the path that roofing is driving? Does that make sense? Okay, okay, perfect. So go to the Gantt chart format or the format bar at the end, and then check the critical. And then you can also, in the task ribbon, there's a tool that's called inspect. So this is in task ribbon, and then it's called inspect. Does everybody see that? So now if I click on an activity, so say I click on interior walls, then I see what's driving interior walls, and it's the structural light gauge framing. So if I click on paint, that's driven off of tape and texture with a lag of 3 days. So this will just give you some information, bless you. This will just give you some information also as you're going through your schedule for what's driving it. If you like this, you don't need to use this. This is your own preference. But if you're thinking, oh, what's this following? Why is this pushed out? So you'll say, oh, why is, roofing pushed out? Oh, well, it's following with a lag of 4 from joist and decking. And it'll tell you. You can actually click on it too, and it'll take you to that activity, and then you can go back to it. So that's just clicking in here, and then you can even trace it back with the logic as well. Right, if you have something that seems off. It doesn't work perfectly. It does struggle with overlapping logic. Sometimes it doesn't read right. But for the most part, it's correct and it's beneficial. All right. That is everything that we had for today. Do you guys have any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.